Hi, I'm Dan Sachs, a music educator and the host of Noodle Loaf, the interactive music-themed podcast for kids. Each episode of Noodle Loaf is a series of fun games designed to get the kids and their grown-ups singing, moving, and laughing together. We sing echo songs, we play clapping games, and other stuff like trivia. It's a blast. So check out Noodle Loaf next time you're looking to have some music fun. That's really music education in disguise. Shh, don't tell.
All you need is a few minutes to start your day off with something historic when you listen to the This Day in History podcast. Every day there's a new episode for you to listen and learn about what happened that day way back when. So listen and subscribe to This Day in History wherever you get your podcasts. That's This Day in History wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Haha! I am back! And there's nothing you can do about it. Except turn this off. No, don't turn this off! Okay, good. You still here? Thanks. Y'all, it's Mick Sullivan. And that means this is the past and the curious. Happy summer, everybody. It's feeling very summery. We've already been to the pool once. Very exciting stuff. I'm fresh off of a fun night. Last night, I took second place, runner-up in Tumble. My good friends Tumble did a fundraiser, Joke Huthon, and I got second place. I was really excited about that. I lost to Lee from Story Pirates, which makes sense, because, he's Lee from Story Pirates. Anyway, this episode, 106, is about electricity and kids. One kid was an inventor. He did some amazing stuff. Another kid was just a series of nameless kids who were part of an experiment that was not harmful to the children. But it was kind of funny, and because of that, we learned a lot about electricity. So buckle up and be grateful, thank your lucky stars for these kids that came before us. In the first half of the 1700s, a surprising scientist took Europe by storm. It was the Age of Enlightenment, a time when smart minds dedicated themselves to understanding the ways of the world through logic and reason and experimentation. And one of the most misunderstood, perplexing, and amazing things in the world at that time was electricity. Experiments with buzzes and crackles and stinky sulfur balls and startling shocks were happening all over, thanks to scientists around the continent. One man, Stephen Gray, emerged as a leader, someone who harnessed the mysterious power and understood it better than anyone. So when he took the stage, people flocked to the spectacle. You might picture him as a rock star, surrounded by smoke and fireworks. But it wasn't quite that dramatic, and if we're being honest, no one really came to see the scientist anyway. They came to see the boy. And the boy could be any boy. Someone from the audience, the son of a friend, even some rando from off the street. Whomever it wound up being on any given night, that boy stole the show. Performative demonstrations that might be described as parlor tricks were how many people learned about electricity in the 1700s. If you weren't a scientist with time to experiment or access to journals that other scientists had published, it's likely that your first exposure to these new discoveries came in the form of an electrical spectacle. In Stephen Gray's case, the spectacle involved a young boy suspended by string, his body hanging either from the ceiling or a long frame stand. Like Superman, frozen in flight, the boy was dangling horizontally. Then, this dangling boy would be electrified. Not fatally, not like lightning bolt, roast a hot dog level electricity. Calm down, what do you think this is? This electrical current might have hurt a bit, maybe a little worse than a bad static shock, like many of us have felt when touching a doorknob on a dry day after walking over a carpet. You've been there, right? Anyway, the boy was safe. Mostly, I guess, as long as the strings holding him up didn't break. This experiment, called the Flying Boy, was a way for Stephen Gray to prove his discovery. The discovery that electricity flows, and that it can flow through a human body. Stephen Gray was born in 1666 in Canterbury, England. His father supported the family through the trade of cloth dyeing. It was a decent living, but difficult work, and one that Stephen joined, along with his older brother. For decades of his life, this was how Stephen made his way.
Dyes and fabrics, fabrics and dyes, any color of cloth to please the eyes.
It was okay work, but it was repetitive and not super easy on the body. Of course, Stephen had other interests, like science. This is what he would have rather been doing, but science didn't pay the bills like dyed fabrics did, so he just had to dabble in science on the side. Typically, at this time, science was a hobby for the rich. Stephen Gray was not rich, but he managed to find a way. He was smart, which sometimes can be more advantageous. He was drawn to astronomy, and for someone who never had training nor much money, he was very good. The work he was able to do was helpful to many of the leading scientists of the 18th century. As a result of his efforts and friendships, many of the people he helped let Stephen use their libraries and tools. And in between fabrics and dyes, he ground his own telescope lenses for observations, which earned him further respect. But a lifetime of hard work as a dyer caught up to him.
Oh, my back, oh.
I feel you, buddy. I really do. When he was around 45 years old, he realized that his body couldn't take the stress from the labor much longer. To add insult to injury, he also found his work to be boring and monotonous. With the help of some friends, he finally quit. Through that help, he lived in a few places, including a hotel and later a home for retired soldiers, where he could experiment. In exchange for rent, he acted as the scientist in residence, there to talk and share insights with tourists and the residents whenever they craved a little science chat. This was when he really got into electricity, which was on the minds of many at the time. His big moment came decades later, though, deep into his life. He was 63 years old in 1729, when one night he was enjoying one of his favorite activities, rubbing glass tubes to charge them with static electricity and then using the tubes to pick up feathers. It's a wild way to spend your evenings, I know. Remember, he was first discovering electricity, so it's not like he could entertain himself with anything, electronic. Honestly, maybe you should thank Stephen. After all, you're listening to this surrounded by electronic devices rather than picking up feathers with static electricity alone in your silent, candlelit room. Anyway, feathers being attracted to a charged tube was not really a new discovery. But on this evening, Stephen left the cork plug on the end of the tube, and he was surprised to find that this cork attracted the feather just like the body of the glass tube. This was entirely new to him, so then he stuck a stick into the end of the cork. He rubbed the tube as always, which created the electric charge, and then sure enough, the feather on the table was attracted to the stick protruding from the cork cap stuck in the glass tube. Then he put an ivory ball at the end. Same thing. The electric charge, which he called virtue, was traveling from the tube through the cork, through the stick, to the ball, which in turn attracted the light and airy feather. So what about string, he asked himself. He fixed the ball to one end of the string and the corked glass tube to the other. Dangle the string, rub the tube, pick up a feather, bada bing, bada boom. Electricity was clearly flowing through each material. This was new, and this was his great discovery. But he couldn't stop there. How far would it travel? Inquiring minds wanted to know. Well, mostly his own inquiring mind wanted to know. So he hung a longer string out of a high window and left a feather on the ground below. Dangle the string, rub the tube, pick up the feather. Once again, it worked. Couldn't stop there, right? So he and a friend made the string longer and longer. They were limited, of course, by how high of a window they could find. If you've listened to this show, you probably know that we were a long way from skyscrapers. So they had to go horizontal, suspending their string across a field with smaller silken strings, which were held up by wooden posts. These cradled the string that they'd send the current through. Hundreds of feet they were able to send the charge, rub the tube, pick up the feather, same as ever. But they also discovered a few things along the way. First, that if the string touched the ground, the charge was lost, and there would be no more attracting the feather. Second, after trying metal wire to suspend the charged string, they discovered something similar. The feather just laid there, unaffected, unattracted, unmoving. Today, we know that metal is a conductor, so they were once again losing that charge. The wire carried the energy away before it could get to the feather. These were the first experiments with conductors and insulators in electricity. Groundbreaking stuff. To learn more about what materials would and wouldn't carry a charge, they tried everything: paper, fabric, wood, you name it, even chickens. Along the way, Gray noticed that he could rub the glass tube and simply get it near something, and the same attraction would happen. The electricity seemed to jump from object to nearby object without physically touching. This was another big discovery, which we now call induction. For these reasons, and others, smart people have claimed that this former fabric dyer is the true father of electricity. His discoveries set us on the path to progress that we know today. But it was the flying boy experiment that wowed the world, and lived on long after Gray was gone. It came after the successful live chicken experiments. Gray wanted to go bigger and better. He saw that a current could travel through poultry and leave it no worse for the wearer. I think it's worth pointing out here how funny it is when you think about picking up feathers with a creature that's already covered in, feathers. Makes you wonder if the thought ever occurred to Stephen. Probably not, though. He was so busy wondering if he could, he never stopped to ask himself if he should. But he did. And then he moved on to the kid. Building a long wooden frame, Gray swaddled a boy, 9 or 10 years old, in thick clothes, and then used silk string to suspend him from the frame. And there he dangled like a Superman marionette, looking at the ground below, wondering which would hurt worse, the electric shock or the bloody nose he'd surely get if the strings broke. The scientist held the charged tube near his feet and then told him to reach out to a nearby table. The feathers on the table, they were attracted to his outstretched hands. Even the boy's nose was like a feather magnet, which was probably ticklish.
Oh, my boy, don't sneeze. You might break the strings. But it tickles. Jumping gigawatts. Be strong, my boy. The future of the world depends on your tickly nose.
Okay, maybe not exactly, but the experiment was a success. And people loved to see the flying boy. It became a parlor trick, and for years afterwards, dozens of different boys carried the distinction of being the flying boy. Oftentimes, a random girl from the audience would join him on stage, stand on a tar-covered bucket for insulation, and touch the flying boy's hand. The audience was amazed to see the current would travel through her then as well. Unfortunately, Stephen Gray didn't live long enough to do all of the things that he hoped to do. He did, however, receive the very first Copley Medal, which is the most prestigious award given by London's Royal Society. This group, officially known as the Royal Society of London for Improving Natural Knowledge, has historically been England's leading organization for science and scientists since its founding in the 1660s. Kind of a big deal to win a Copley Medal. And Stephen Gray, a fabric dyer with no formal education, was brilliant enough to not only win the first, which they created in 1731, but also the second. Many people have a claim to the title, Father of Electricity, but very few made as much early progress as Stephen Gray. Hello, fellow grown-up. I have kids. There are probably kids in your life, and we groanies certainly want to do the best for our children and set them up for success. So, If your child is struggling with a specific subject or they need help with a subject, or if your child is ahead and not getting challenged enough in class, well, then I'd like you to know about IXL. IXL Learning is an online learning program that enriches your homeschool curriculum. It offers practice in math, English language arts, science, social studies, and all along it adapts to each child, meeting them where they are. Plus, IXL encourages students to be curious and empowers them to choose how they learn. I've been there, probably will be there again. It's part of raising kids, I think. Sometimes we find ourselves catching up, or other times we focus on getting ahead on learning, which is always great for confidence. Well, everything on IXL is organized by grade, subject, topic, subtopic, making it simple to find activities for the exact skills that you are covering, so it's easy to use and time-saving. IXL also offers instant feedback and explanation of new topics as kids use the program. And lastly, it's fun for kids. Kids love IXL's positive feedback, awards, and educational games. So make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And the Past and the Curious listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at www.ixl.com/curious. That is www.ixl.com/curious to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price.
Grown-ups, gronies, grony calzones. That brain in your head? Yeah, I know. If you're like me, it is all full up. We got a lot to deal with. Schedules, appointments, schoolwork, dinner plans, all that stuff and more. It's a lot to juggle, and sometimes it's overwhelming. Well, we got a Skylight calendar in my home, and it continues to be a game changer. I really, really like it. It syncs the entire family schedule into a sleek digital display that sits right there on our kitchen counter. It's 15-inch. It's beautiful. It's Wi-Fi connected. It's an all-in-one smart calendar. It works with Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, Outlook, and more. You can customize however you like it. There's also a free Skylight companion app where you can add and update events, lists, and more on the go. So you can do it from work. You can do it from a parking lot. You could, if you have a Wi-Fi signal on the moon, I guess you could do it on the moon. I'm not going to the moon anytime soon. Maybe you are, but it is fantastic. And it has more than anything. I love the calendar. I love the grocery list. And I also love putting our schoolwork assignments on there and having my kids check them off. It has really, really changed our evenings and homework time and all of that. That is the biggest win for me ever. So it's great. And your happiness is Skylight's happiness. So if in 120 days, you're not 100% thrilled with your purchase of a Skylight calendar, you can return it for a full refund. No questions asked. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off of their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/curious. Go to skylightcal.com/curious for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal.com/curious.
Oh, hi. We're back. That magical sound that I've never used before to let you know that it's time for You Have 30 Seconds means it's time for You Have 30 Seconds, Sarah Myers. I want to learn about a cryptid.
Hello, my name is Sarah Myers and I'm 12 years old. Now, I'm pretty sure that we've all heard of the Kraken. You know, the legendary sea monster? Well, the Kraken is most likely made up from sailors who got a little too excited when retelling their adventures with giant or colossal squid. These sailors believed that the Kraken was gigantic and a hybrid of different sea creatures. Were they right? They were worse than right. They were wrong. There really isn't any scientific evidence that the Kraken actually exists, but a big percentage of the ocean remains unexplored. Who knows what we could find? I love your podcast. Thank you. Information by Britannica and Galen Contact.
Who knows indeed? What a mystery the sea could be. Yeah, great work, Sarah. I think stories about animals, maybe cryptids, real things, fake things, who knows, are really interesting. So thank you for sharing the Kraken story. And even if it's not real, there's some great literature about the Kraken, right? Oh, man. Well, if anyone else out there has a 30 seconds, all you got to do is record it with a voice memo like Sarah Myers did. And such a great job she did. And you can email it to us. Thanks, Sarah.
It's quiz time. It's quiz time. It's quiz time. Time.
That's right. Quiz time. We're talking electricity today. Question number 1. The Centennial bulb is the name given to the oldest functional incandescent light bulb in the world, and it is on right now in Livermore, California. It's only been turned off a few times in its long existence. So can you guess when it was first turned on? How long has it been on? This is so awesome. It was made in the 1890s in Ohio, and then the bulb came into the possession of the fire department in Livermore, California, back in 1901. Only being turned off a few times to move it to the occasional new location, the bulb has been on almost non-stop since 1902. What? Its power has diminished significantly over the years, and it's only about as bright as a nightlight today. But holy cow, that's awesome. Okay, question number 2. Electric Avenue, made famous by the song in the 1970s, I'm gonna walk down to Electric Avenue. It's a real place. And in what city is the original Electric Avenue? And then I'll take you higher. Electric Avenue is in Brixton, in South London. The street was the first market street in the city of London to be lit with electric lights, giving it the name Electric Avenue. Okay, your third and final question. Where is the world's largest light bulb? The Thomas Edison Memorial Tower was built in 1937 in what we now call Edison, New Jersey. The tower honors the location of the laboratory where Edison's light bulb was first invented, along with many of the other creations he and his firm gave to the world. The light bulb, which is atop the giant tower, is 13 feet tall and weighs about 8 tons. They turn it on most every night. Sometimes mysteriously brilliant ideas can fill our head at the most surprising moments. Solutions to pestering problems often come when we're occupied with something mundane. Did you ever have a brilliant idea while standing in the shower, mindlessly washing your hair, or out of nowhere solve a problem that had been plaguing you while walking the dog, or kneading Play-Doh, or throwing a ball against a brick wall? Sometimes if you're stuck without a solution, a good thing to do is to get up and move around, because busying your body can often unlock your mind. For 14-year-old Philo Farnsworth of Rigby, Idaho, that magical moment came while plowing a field, leaving it neatly patterned with straight lines in the dirt. Now, as you might imagine, plowing the field was not something that he particularly enjoyed, but on this day, the seeds of his mind began to sprout. He had been looking for a solution to his problem, with no luck, but at once it came to him while staring at the lines in the earth.
Television.
This kid invented television. Or at least he had the idea to invent it. It would take him many more years to finish the job, and others were working on it at the same time. But if not for this kid in Idaho in 1921, much of what we know about TV might have never come to be. If that's not impressive enough, when he was younger than 14, closer to 12 in fact, Philo won a national competition to improve the Ford Model T, the most popular automobile of the time. His family had moved from Utah, where they lived without electricity, and on the ranch where they moved in Idaho, their small house did have electricity, which absolutely tickled the boy. He was so fascinated with electronics and technology that he would disassemble and reassemble the generator, and he saw the unlimited potential of the power. Around that same time, he found a stack of science and technology magazines, which he devoured, easily understanding things most people would stare at in paralyzed confusion. And in one of these, he read about a contest, a call to the public from the Ford Motor Company for improvements. Philo realized a pretty big problem with Ford's car keys. They were all the same. Using any Ford key, you could start and steal any other Ford Model T that you came across. Whoops. His idea was an affordable way to magnetize the keys so that they would only work on a specific car. This meant no more free Model Ts for anyone with keys. And it also meant Philo was on his way to the history books. He won first prize in the contest. At his junior high school in Idaho, he formed an important connection with a science teacher who, after much resistance, allowed the youngster to join a class well above his grade. But to Philo, these senior-level science classes were just what his brain needed. The teacher, who was no slouch, realized that Philo might understand science more deeply and intuitively than anyone else in the room, himself included. And while everything electric captivated Philo Farnsworth, the nebulous idea of television, of delivering moving images from place to place, was an idea that he could not get out of his brain. But he never saw a solution until he saw the rows of dirt. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I understand the finer points of Philo's plan, but I do know that people were trying to send images over distances mechanically, with things like moving disks. The idea was also around to send electrons across a vacuum tube to create an image, but it was obvious that this was no way to project a clear, defined image. There was no way to organize the information into an understandable picture. Philo figured these would never work, but staring at the dirt lines, he thought that maybe someone could create lines of electron rays on a screen, and as the electrons travel across at great speeds, they could be organized in such a way as to replicate the image and to do so at a speed so fast that the human eye wouldn't detect the flickering of light. He was convinced that he could make it work. If only he weren't, a middle schooler with no money in the middle of Idaho and hundreds of miles away from the scientists and the labs with the resources who could make it real. His dad told him to keep all of this to himself. Everyone already thought he was weird, he told his son. This harebrained plan out of left field that no one understood would just make things worse.
Real dad of the year stuff.
Thanks for the support, old man. After filling a gigantic school blackboard, mad scientist style, with all the detailed mechanical plans of his vision, Philo's teacher told him something similar. But Teacher Man's advice not to tell anyone was grounded in the awareness that this harebrained plan might just work. Philo should spend some more time and thought on it, and not tell anyone until he was totally ready. But the family was having money troubles, and his parents moved everyone back to Utah. So Philo didn't finish school in person, but rather via correspondence, through course lessons that were mailed to his home, which he completed and sent back for feedback and grading. It was the original asynchronous learning. Imagine NTI school, but not by Google Classroom or Zoom, but rather by mail. Soon after, he joined the army, and then back home he met a woman that he would marry and got a series of jobs, including one as a street sweeper, jobs that gave him no path forward for the development of the television idea he had in his mind. But when he took a temporary office job for a couple of wealthy businessmen, his good work left them curious about what he'd like to do when the temporary job ended. They were surprised to learn he wasn't going to college. He had a brilliant mind and strong drive, clearly. Philo told them that he couldn't afford to go to college. And besides, any money he had would need to go towards his invention. Philo knew that without a team and a lab and resources, if this invention was going to happen, he had to do it himself.
What's the invention? The men asked.
Television.
Tell who?
A vision.
Who is a vision?
No, television.
Tell-a-vision. What?
Tell you what? I'll break it down for you. Seriously, these guys had no idea what he was talking about. But after a thorough explanation, the men realized he was onto something big. And if they helped him, they'd be on the front end of something big too. So they gave it some thought and decided to invest their money. This meant Philo could have time and some resources to make his big idea real. Philo and his wife set up a laboratory in their apartment. And of course, strange materials being brought into the home and mysterious experiments lasting long into the night led the neighbors to wonder,
What's going on in there?
Is it something nefarious?
I bet the Farnsworths are bad people.
"Nope," the cop said after the neighbors called them in.
He's just building something he calls a television. Tell who?
Let's not do this again, okay?
It took a long time. Years, in fact. Lots of stops and starts, heartaches and headaches. Inventing things can be messy. And as it turned out, a few very large, powerful companies were working on the same TV ideas at the same time. Primarily, a company called RCA was hot on the trail. Both Philo and one of their employees had filed patents around the same time. And as you might imagine, they were making more progress. This eventually led to a court battle between Philo Farnsworth and RCA to determine who came up with the details of a functional television first. When Philo's lawyer needed a witness, he knew just who to call. Philo's junior high science teacher, who still had the notes of that crazy idea from when Philo was just a teenager. This helped Philo win, and the U.S. Patent Office named him the first official patent holder of the electronic television in the United States. It wasn't the only patent he'd earned throughout his life, though. He was actually awarded over 300 patents for his work. Other inventions of his had to do with infrared and night vision, medical equipment, microscopes, telescopes, and nuclear fusion. Clearly, Philo Farnsworth was a guy with big ideas. Not all of them landed, and not all of them led to financial success. But there are echoes in the world all around us today of that harebrained idea he had on an Idaho potato farm when he was only 14 years old. I bet that kid from long ago would absolutely be amazed to hear this information. And his father probably would have been too. For all his work inventing the television, Philo only appeared on it once. Maybe twice. An Idaho news reporter said that he interviewed Philo the day the Idaho news station KID-TV went on the air for the first time in 1953. There's actually no recording or documentation of that, so we don't know for sure. But we do know that in 1957, he went on a game show called I've Got a Secret, where a panel of celebrities would ask questions to the contestant and try to figure out who they were or what they did. When Philo was on, he won because no one knew or could figure out who the heck he was. It's safe to say the people watching at home on their television sets had no idea either. No idea at all that he was the man with the patent for the very invention they were watching. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Listen, I can't tell you how difficult it was for me not to make a second consecutive Minecraft lava chicken joke. I mean, it was right there. His name was Steven, and he was electrifying chickens. It was like Steve's Electric Chicken. I mean, but I used it last week, and I felt like I committed to Rufus very well. Rufus deserves it. We're going to go with Rufus. So I'm glad I did it that way. Anyway, thank you for listening. I have some people to thank. First of all, I want to thank you because you're here, you're listening, and that means everything. Please keep listening. Please tell people. Please leave a review. Please subscribe. Please do the things that help us reach more people. That is crucial. This is an independent organization to the degree that it is me. I do this. I read. I write. I research. I record. I edit. I do the music. Holy cow, it's a lot. So I really appreciate you being here. And I appreciate the people who support along the way. Like someone named Dean Absets. Dean in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Hello from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Dean, thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it. I'm so glad that you are out there listening. The same goes for Martha Bandberg. Martha, looks like you're in Rhode Island. Hey, what's going on to you? Thank you so much for listening as well. I am glad that your ears are out there too. that goes for everyone's ears. Everyone's ears. I'm grateful that they are out there. Really, it does mean a lot. I thank you all very much. I had hoped at this point in the year that I would be telling you that I was working on a book deal and things were looking that way, and they're not. It fell apart. So I've been kind of down on the dumps about that, but I'm going to persevere. I'm going to re-navigate and find a new way. But if you happen to have a way to, find me an agent, then that would be great. Maybe we'll kickstart something. I have to finish working on it in any case. But that's it's important to remember, everybody. Sometimes things go your way, sometimes they don't. But we're gonna keep going on, keep having fun, keep telling stories, having some laughs, being goofy, and I'll be back next month with some more stories. Okay? This is Mick Sullivan. Thanks for listening to The Past and the Curious.
We've all been there. You're standing in a museum staring at a painting and all you can think is, I don't get it. To me, knowing the story behind an artwork is a huge part of knowing how to look at it. I'm Amanda, the host of the Art of History podcast, where we view history through the lens of some really great works of art. Each episode, we dive deep into the bigger picture behind some familiar and maybe not so familiar pieces. Check out Art of History now wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you find it hard to sleep at night? Then the Sleep Cove podcast can help you. Hi, I'm Christopher Fitton, the voice and clinical hypnotherapist behind Sleep Cove. Sleep Cove features sleep hypnosis, meditations, and bedtime stories, all designed to help those of you who struggle at night to achieve a restful and peaceful night's sleep. Search for Sleep Cove on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and see why Sleep Cove helps millions of people sleep deeply